Introduce you both at the same time. Hello, are you guys, everybody ready? Okay. Okay, so today here we have Ms. Deanne Wallace. She serves as the Victim Assistance Specialist for Homeland Security Investigations in Washington, D.C., which oversees offices across Virginia, West Virginia, and the district. In this role, she bridges the gap between law enforcement needs and victim services. She works with federal agents, local and state law enforcement officers, and nonprofit organizations across 2 states and the District of Columbia on cases involving human trafficking. And she has more than 15 years of experience in this field. She has received significant training on how to interact with victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and child exploitation, and is often consulted as a subject matter expert on these issues. And to my right, we have Ms. Angela Alvarez. She is the State Response Trafficking Coordinator with the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services. Earlier in life, she was employed with the Tampa Police Department, where she worked as a plainclothes officer investigating both narcotics and prostitution cases. She moved to Virginia, and in 2015, she accepted a position as the Human Trafficking Specialist with Prince William County Public Schools. During her tenure there, she successfully doubled the size of the program to serve all the high schools in the county. Through these positions, she was able to develop firsthand experience with the world of human trafficking, and these 2 ladies are going to talk to us today.
Oh, you want me to clip it? God, I'm so obnoxiously loud. I don't know if you need this. Huh? Okay, so we're going to start off today. I first have to thank you guys for coming, because I know that human trafficking on a whole is not a topic a lot of people want to be vested in or want to spend a lot of time on it. So thank you so much for wanting to hear about it. Thank you for coming out. I appreciate everybody being here, because the more knowledge that you get, the more that we can bring people out of the shadows, the more that people feel accepted and they can come forward and talk about their victimization, whether it be because I've encountered them because of a case, or because we've met somebody who we would maybe classify as an independent. They feel like this is the only thing that they offer. It's the only way that they can earn money. And being able to say to somebody, you're more than what the crime is, you're more than what's happening to you, is a really big deal. So as you guys heard, I'm the victim specialist for HSI. I pace, so what's easier for you guys? You guys want to look at the screen and not me, right? You want me to be behind you so I don't get you guys all stop pacing? No, you don't care? All right, well, I'm just going to ignore you then. Okay, so my title is kind of cool. It means that I am not a law enforcement officer. I do not carry a badge, but I am considered law enforcement, right? So basically, when somebody encounters a victim or thinks that they're going to encounter a victim, they call me in. I assist with the op planning. I go to the hotels. When we encounter people, I sit on every single task force, collaborative, talking group, whatever. If in the state of Virginia, DC, or West Virginia, you were talking about human trafficking, I beg to be on that. Right? Because the more people that I know, the more people that I can talk to, the more that I can reach out to people and say, I have somebody in need and can you help me? That makes a difference, right? We're not isolated. We have to look at this as a village, and the village is what's going to make a difference for these victims. So what we're going to talk about today is laws. Because I think a lot of people are hearing about human trafficking and they're like, we need to do more, we need to have better laws. Well, you'd be surprised how many laws that we actually have that do make a difference. So, have you guys already had a lot of the definition of human trafficking? Like more than enough? We're gone. Okay. So, think outside the box. Outside the box is what's going to get these cases done. Big one for us, MDTs. Are you guys familiar with an MDT? No, okay. Multiple disciplinary team. It means that, like I said, a village is going to make a difference for the victim. So I'm going to reach out to law enforcement. I'm talking to medical. I am talking to teachers. I am talking to government officials. I'm talking to anybody that has the potential to encounter one of my victims, right? So the state has already done MDTs, and they do it for child abuse and sexual assault cases. So that way, instead of having all of us call on the phone and be like, what are you doing? What are you doing? We all sit at one table, and we have an agenda, and we all get it done in one day, right? No, that's not true. So we all just sit there and we talk, and then we move through it. Well, the big thing is, because of this, we are now not having to worry about FOIA, open meetings, mandatory records, disclosure and stuff. It's a really big deal, because that means that, you know, when you go and talk to people and we start talking about confidentiality, what's one of the biggest things people say? I can't talk to you because I can't disclose that. This allows all of us to sit in a room and talk about something and really make sure that everybody who needs to lay hands on this child can lay hands on them, and we can talk about anything that we need to. It's a great way to do it. Anybody familiar with the Address Confidentiality Program? Okay, so the Address Confidentiality Program is for victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking, and human trafficking. So if you don't want people to have access to your address, you can apply through them, and it's through the Attorney General's office. And you can go into this program, and the courts and everybody will go send mail to the Attorney General office, and then it gets mailed to them. So what does this mean? This means that a defense attorney will not have that victim's address, right? Because as you guys know, for most official documents, you have to have an actual address, not a P.O. box. Well, guess what? You can move out of state, you can move into the state, and you can have an address that nobody will know actually where you live. So if you're in a trafficking situation, is that a pretty big deal? Sure, because you don't need to have a court case attached to it. So I flee my trafficker, and I come to the state of Virginia, but maybe he's suing me, or maybe somebody's trying to find me. I now have a safe place that I can get a form, I fill it out, and the trafficker and the courts won't know where I live. You just know I'm in the state of Virginia. It's free. It's a great protection. And it makes it so that people feel like they can talk more, because, you know, when you go to court and all those subpoenas and everything, you know that they'll have your address because it has to be given directly to you, but this will block it. Yep.
About how many people a year do you think use that?
So Melissa McInerney, who she's the one that runs it, she's got to have like a couple thousand maybe. So almost in every single state, there's one of these. So the good thing is, if you're leaving a state and you're coming to a state that has this, it'll be a smooth transition. Domestic violence, you can understand why this is a really big one. What do we know about human trafficking and domestic violence? They go together, right? And a lot of the times the victims they'll say it's their boyfriend. So even if you're not in their minds, a trafficking victim, this will also make it so that they can be away from that person too. So it's a great thing in order to add another layer of protection. Okay, how about if you are convicted of sex trafficking, what are you charged with? You are now a sex offender, right? This new law came out in 2018. It means that a person cannot be, like a child cannot be left alone with a registered sex offender. And if they're found that way, the Commonwealth attorney must be called and told immediately. So why is this a big deal? Well, if you're a sex offender who happens to be a human trafficker, and you're encountered with a minor, and the minor doesn't disclose who you are, but we know, because we run you, that you're a sex offender, guess what? The Commonwealth attorney is now going to know about this. So it's a different way to get law enforcement and to get people in law enforcement communities to be aware that a child has been encountered with a registered sex offender who is also a human trafficker, right? And as you can see, must be done in 2 hours. The Commonwealth attorney must be notified. That's how fast that one's got to go. It's a good way to bring it to law enforcement without anybody having red flags or anything, but we have this, which means it's going to be passed down to us, and it's going to give us information that we have an adult male who's a registered sex offender, or adult female that's a registered sex offender, with a child that's not theirs. And why is that? Right? So it brings it to attention in a different way. Think outside the box. Juvenile retention for JDR. So this one extends until the person is 21 years old. So if you encounter a minor, and the act occurs when they're a minor and then they turn 18. That's a really big deal, right? That means they're shifting courts. They're going from a juvenile until they're an adult. Well, we've had cases where the victim on their 18th birthday have done a criminal act or something else happened to them. But luckily, because of this, we can now keep them in JDR court. Because as you guys know, I'm sure from everything you've heard, victims don't always identify as a victim, right? So if we're not there yet with them and we're still trying to help them and we're still trying to stabilize them, this means we don't have to necessarily worry that a juvenile will now be identified and have to go to an adult prison, or their charges are going to shift. So I had a young girl that her trafficking case, it's over so I can talk about it. Her mom was killed. Her mom was a sex trafficking victim. She was killed by her trafficker. She was pulled into the life that way. She encounters a trafficker. We get her out of this situation, and we thought she was good, but she couldn't stabilize, right? Her brothers convinced her to hold up a John with a gun, and she got charged with armed robbery. She then turned 18 the next day. So it could have gone either way, right? But because we argued and said because of the criminalization, the victimization she was going with, we argued, please keep her in JDR court. And they did. And so all the protections and everything of the services she's able to get as a minor, she still gets to get them. Now, we may not have been able to do that as easy.
Well, this hypothetical case, she did that when she was 16, and they finally found out and charged her when she was 19.
Mm-hmm.
Could you still be, because she was a minor, could still be in juvenile?
It depends on if they're going to grandfather it in, because was this a law when that occurred, or was it, did it predate it and they didn't want to grandfather it? And a lot of the times, even though it's a law, it still depends on the jurisdiction on how they want to handle it. But at least you can bring this up and you can now talk about it and argue, we would like to have this, so this could please happen. Because we didn't have that ability before, we just begged. All right, anybody hear about this one? This one made the news. You guys remember Ashante? Young lady who went missing, her mom and her sisters were calling everybody, but because she was an adult, the parents were like, she's endangered, and they were like, well, you gotta wait that length of time, but they were like, no, this isn't like her, and then they found her later. She had been murdered, and she was in a, like beyond a dumpster, I believe down like in the Hampton Roads area, right? So because of her parents and a lot of people who were like, this is wrong, we got the Ashante alert, which is basically an Amber alert for an endangered adult. Why am I excited about this? Well, if I have an adult human trafficking victim who is in a shelter and now she goes missing, guess what I get to do? I get to do this. Now before, if I had a witness or a victim that went missing, we just filed the missing persons report and you had to wait that length of time that you have to do that, and then you hope that people will keep an eye out and we can do like a BOLO, be on the lookout type of thing, and that's all you could do. This actually means when you do this alert, it goes out like an Amber alert. It will go up so people see it, you get it as a text message, you can get all the notifications. So this amps that up if one of my victims goes missing from a shelter or from a home and nobody knows what happened. Because we don't always get the bad guys off the streets as quickly as we want to. There's bond, there's bail, right? We don't know everybody that they're talking to. So if we have somebody that goes missing, this spreads it out wider and quicker for us, right? So the other nice thing about it is you don't just have to be law enforcement, because I can be a BOLO, right, and do that with law enforcement. This means family members can also call in and tell the law enforcement, I have a child that's in an endangered situation, she's domestic violence, she's been sexually assaulted, she's a stalking victim. This will protect them too. Presumption against bail. This was huge. If you're charged with sex trafficking in the state of Virginia and it is a local case, you do not get bail. Don't ask for it, you won't get it. Because if you're charged with that, no more. That's a huge big deal, right? One of the things that we know is that the longer and the faster that you can have distance for the victim and the trafficker is less time that they get to start really stabilizing and really thinking about what happened to them, right? They're being able to get a better perspective of it. They're being able to hear people better because that person is not right in their ear, right? It's not a constant, listen to me, love me, love me, love me. So if they go to jail, they get to have a better, oh, I didn't want that would happen. I didn't know that that was going to happen to me. I want to talk to somebody. I want to get help, right? So that time with not having to worry about bail is huge. So How do you guys feel about dogs? Everybody like them? All right, if you're a cat person, you're probably like, Dee Dee. I can't help you with that, all right? But dogs, what do we know about how people interact with animals? Does it soothe them, calm them, be able to, if you have anxiety, if you have PTSD, like what do dogs do for you? Take a breath, right? Give you that sense of peace. So Virginia went ahead, and we've always had court dogs for about I think about 7 years now. We've had court dogs, but we couldn't get them in when people were testifying because they said that made it so that if juries or the judge saw somebody with a dog, that it gave them, I'm trying to think of an easy way to say this. So it lent toward them pretending to be a victim, right? Like their emotions aren't as bad as what they are. That's why, I don't know if anybody knows this, when we have young people testifying, they can't bring a doll into court a lot of the times. They can't hold something because nobody can see it. So when we were asking, can you please let the dog go in there with them because you can see that they can calm down and they feel safe and they can talk about what happened, well, the judges weren't letting that happen. They were like, it's okay for them to be in the witness rooms, it's okay for them to be interviewed, but they can't come in my court. Now they can. Yes?
Are these state laws?
These are state laws. Yeah, feds, we just don't have this much fun. Yep. But I think it's important because a lot of people diss Virginia because it took us so long to get our laws. But I tell you what, since we got it, we're trying, right? We got the Crime Commission and we have other things we're trying to work. And like I said, sometimes because of the type of cases that we're looking at, it's outside the box that's going to get us more hands-on and really start making a difference. You just got to understand that sometimes it's not going to be a direct path to get where you want to go. You work with what you got, right? So this was a big one for us to stabilize when we're having to ask them to go to court. Again, the SRTs and the abuse, bringing up again about why it's important and why you can do it. I keep going over this because if you guys have seen it, we've been in the news a lot with the FOIA, right? A lot of people don't want to talk and a lot of people don't want to do stuff. This was another one. This one occurred in 2019 for human trafficking with sex tourism. It's a misdemeanor for a travel agent or somebody who acts as a travel agent who to promote prostitution or sex offenses. Now this is a little different, right? Wasn't really prepared for when this came out. I don't think a lot of people were. Normally my sex tourism cases are overseas. But you know what? It's out there and it means that we have, if somebody is acting as a promoter or as a person with the intent to do something as a travel agent, if you were. So basically what this means is that if I was a person who was promoting come to Virginia because it's cheap sex and you can have a lot of it. And then I was encouraging people to come and then I'll book your hotels and I'll do all that for you. So what does that sound like? Anybody think it sounds like a trafficker? Mm-hmm. But they can get around it. We've had people who have been able to get around it because they're like, but I'm not a trafficker because I don't work with the girls. Right? I have no encounter, I just answer the phones, I just do this or I do that. But I promote it, I take money from it, and I encourage them to come in a certain area to meet certain people. Well, they could work as a travel agent. Yes?
I have a question. What if they're not promoting themselves as a travel agent, but model agency?
Sure.
Does that still apply to them as well? Because I know the code can be really specific sometimes.
So it's going to be a matter of it has to fall within the prostitution realm. So if you're saying a modeling and you're getting them to take photos, but it has nothing to do with prostitution, it has more to do with pornography, that one probably wouldn't fly. It has to be that prostitution component. So this one was for closed circuit TV, that's a CCTV, which means that a minor would be able to testify in a closed chamber while the defendant was out in the open courtroom. And then the defense would actually go into that closed courtroom or into that room and talk to the child too. So at no point in time are they physically in the room with their trafficker. It's awesome. Right, we have that for child sex abuse cases. It gives them that ability to not have to physically see or be in the same room, because you also have to keep in mind some of our traffickers are who? Family members. So you're testifying against a mom, a dad, an uncle, a cousin. That's pretty hard in the first place, and especially if they're making facial expressions or they're doing something that's encouraging that fear or making them feel guilty. This will allow them to have that little bit of a distance where they don't actually have to be in the room with them. So they're not making eye contact, they're not doing any of that. Sex trafficking of minors creates a class 6 felony for aiding and using a vehicle. Well, wow. Now, what would that mean? Using a vehicle. Transportation, right? It could be that you're moving a minor from one place to another. So it's kind of interesting because a lot of people didn't look at who's the driver, because it's not always the trafficker, because the trafficker doesn't always have a driver's license or the money to get a car. What do you guys think about Ubers? Uber drivers. Do you ever think of that falling into that category? You should. You should. Not only have we encountered Uber drivers who are the ones that are being called up, hey, there's a girl at this hotel, pick her up and drive her to that hotel, even though she's a minor, right? Uber drivers haven't said anything, they've done that. We've also encountered Uber drivers who are traffickers. And they'll say to young girls in the car or adult women, hey, if you work with me, I'll get you some money. You seem a little desperate. How can I help? This will allow us to go after them on that one. Department of Social Services to do a sex trafficking assessment. Huge, big deal, right? Huge, big deal. Still working on this, still trying to see what this is going to look like. So thankful that we have them as our partners now and that we can sit at that MDT not just with the NGOs and law enforcement, but CPS is now a partner in that also. Oh, do you want it back? There you go. All right. Juvenile crime, prevention of juvenile crime. Adds to the language of the crime so that identifying at-risk kids. So has anybody heard about CHINS, child in need of supervision, child in need of services? So basically what that means is that you're encountering a family or a child that they're saying, I can't do this. My child needs these services, my child is acting out, my child has a need, and my family can't make it help me raise my child. Right? So you go to the court and the courts offer you services. They can offer you, like, it could be at the school that they're going to help you with. It could be a probation officer. It could be like a plethora of all these wonderful things, which is awesome, and we need them. This is helping us get this closer to also using this for our trafficking victims. Because I can't just walk into a court and say, I found a child, can you give them CHINS? You have to go through a formal process. This is helping us narrow this down. This is helping us bring more people who see these children at risk and are identifying them and locating them in a different way than just us, right? Because just because a child doesn't come in as a trafficking victim does not mean that they won't fall within this category. So having them get more identification and more training and knowledge is bringing attention to these kids too. How many times have you heard, or like stories in the news or whatever, young girl runs away with older male found in a hotel? Right? Schools hear it a lot, right? Girl keeps partying, she runs around, she's always with her boyfriend, he gives her all this money. We've heard this for years, right? But we don't always look at them because not everybody sits together in the room and talks and have informative discussions about, wait, why is she always found in a hotel? Why are they always going to this one hotel? Why are these always just this boyfriend? Why do you give her 2 phones? Why does he tell her what to do and she listens to her daddy? Right? It's trying to get everybody in the room together to have that discussion and to look at these at-risk kids, because a lot of the times, my victims of juvenile, that's who they are. Okay, big one. Mental health within the jails. My adult victims specifically, this is amazing. This is now getting them to get the services to help them stabilize. If I don't know I'm a victim, how do I transition to go from victim to survivor? I need help. I need stabilization. I need people to talk to. When this is going on in the jails, that means that they're talking to their counselors, right? And they're talking to them and helping them realize you're a victim. Would you like to talk to somebody about that? Would you like to further understand what happened to you? And how can we make sure that when you get out, you can still get the services you need. CICF, they increase their funds. They're looking at how they can help make more of a difference. To go from 25,000 to 35,000 is huge. You guys know how much counseling costs, right? If I was a victim and I had been victimized for years, and that's not even including what happened to me as a kid, how long do you think I'm going to be in counseling? Is there a point that you can say 6 sessions is going to be it? I'm good? Probably not. If you think one rape victim with one person that's been raped is traumatizing and it tears your soul, can you imagine somebody that's been forced in like 3 to 4 years of a trafficking situation and they're forced to service like 5, 10, 15 men a night? I suck at math, so I'm hoping you guys could figure that one out. It's a lot, right? It's a lot. A lot of men. A lot of women that they're forced to have sex with. When I say forced, I'm flat out going to say it. It's rape, sexual assault, right? It's not a willing thing. That door does not open and they get excited who walks in. Child pornography registry. Why would I care about this for trafficking? If I'm posting and I'm sending or I'm trying to get somebody to buy my merchandise, what am I doing? How am I promoting it? That's it. I'm sending pictures, aren't I? So if we keep track, we start watching, am I going to be able to identify more victims? Identify traffickers? Identify people that are harming children? Yep.
Can I ask you, is it a crime to send out adult pornography if it's against the wishes of the
Yes,
woman?
blackmail. But, well, you have to have it in a blackmail form.
Okay.
Right? And that we have really good laws. We, by the way, guys should, this moment for the state of Virginia, we are one of the few states that if I take your picture and I cut, I take your picture, I take your head, cut it off, and I put it on a naked male, and then I send that out, I can now be charged. That is not a crime in pretty much every single state. Because before they were like, well, it's not actually his body, so what harm could that be? Well, it's a really big thing if I take it and then I push it out to everybody in your social media and people don't realize that I digitally did that to you. They think it's actually you naked. So it is now a crime in the state of Virginia to do that too. So what resources are we talking about? A village. I just got to keep reiterating that with you guys. It's got to take a village. Hold on. And I'm almost done, I promise. So if you see something, please say something. Understand local law enforcement will be way faster than the feds. We are super slow. It takes us a while. But in case you do want to talk to one of us, you want to send us a tip, that's our tip line. It's the DHS tip line. You can submit it, text it, call it, whatever you want. It goes straight to an agent, and we will start looking into that immediately. Please keep in mind, 911 is the best thing if you think a person's in danger, though. And then you have the National Human Trafficking Hotline. And then that also gives resources for the victims. Thank you so very much. You guys you're good. That's me. Please take my name, my number. Call me if you need me. I'm on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So don't worry about it. And I've been on call since 2006. So, and as you can tell, I'm a little hyper. So don't worry about it. I'm always good. Thank you so very much, everybody. Yep. Oh, God, yeah, please take this. So they don't have to listen to me. Wait. There you go. I told you, I was obnoxiously loud. I don't know why. You good?
We're recording this. Is this allowed to be recorded?
Yeah.
It's okay.
Or for me it is. For
Fame.
Dee Dee.
What are you going to do with it?
Post it on my website as a resource. Should we just cut? We'll just cut
yeah.
out this whole section?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I didn't get approval first.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, give me 1 second. You guys can hear me? I'm gonna try to clip this on me so I'm not carrying it. Okay. All right, so I am Angela Alvarez. I am the new state trafficking response coordinator for the entire state of Virginia, and I'm housed within the Department of Criminal Justice Services over on Bank Street. So I am mobile, though. I'm not always in that office. If you try to find me, I'm all over the place. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit more specifically about how the general problem of human trafficking and all the laws that Dee Dee just went over are sort of paring down into a streamlined response for the state and what we hope to do. So if you've seen me recently, this is probably a very similar or the same presentation that you've already seen, so bear with me because a lot of people still have not seen it. This is one thing that I always try to get across to everybody from the time that I was law enforcement to the time that I was working at schools in Prince William to now, okay? Human trafficking can affect absolutely everybody in this room or anyone you know. It is very difficult for law enforcement to figure out what a profile of an exploited individual or a profile of a trafficker or a buyer looks like, okay? I have made cases on people all the way on the buyer's front, all the way to mayor's offices and politicians and city architects and all kinds of people. You know, traffickers come in all shapes, forms, sizes, genders, ages, okay? So just understand that. These are some general trends that we're seeing, and this is anecdotal information. People are always asking me about data collection. There is absolutely no comprehensive data collection in place right now anywhere in the entire nation. Any stats you see are specific to the agency collecting them. For example, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They have great stats, but they're based on calls and reports that they get sent to their agency. Prince William County Schools keeps explicit stats on all of the students that they have serviced, case managed, you know, very, very detailed information on that. Those are just the students in that school division, right? You do not have comprehensive data collection. That's something I'm working on, but it's going to be a very long road for a lot of reasons. It's not just as simple as making a data collection mechanism and saying, hey guys, report to me. There's a lot to that. So this is anecdotal information. In the Northern Virginia region for the last 2 to 2.5 years, they have had an extremely high incidence of gang-related trafficking cases, specifically MS-13. This year, that seems to be shifting a little bit. And when you're talking about gangs, that's normal, because when everybody starts putting a lot of attention on a specific gang or a topic, gangs in general, they sort of start to fall a little bit quiet. They don't like that attention. They want to be a little bit under the radar. That's still there. That problem's still happening with the gang-related trafficking, but it's not quite as prevalent in terms of being reported or seen as it has been the past 2 to 2.5 years. Right now, they're seeing just a mixture of cases. They're seeing family trafficking. They're seeing non-gang-related trafficking. They're seeing some gang-related trafficking. So it's just a mixture. From what I'm being told in this area, you're seeing a lot of non-gang-related trafficking situations. So what I call standard pimp control, or it could be family-controlled as well. Roanoke and Southwestern region, the people that live in that area, within that population, they're seeing a lot of family-controlled trafficking. But they're seeing transient trafficking. And what I mean by that is I-81, over the past several years, has become the new 95. So they are seeing victims being transited up and down 81 by both a mixture of gang and non-gang related traffickers. And in the Tidewater region, they're just seeing a mixture of cases as well. And depending on who you talk to, I have different responses to that. Some say, I have no idea why that is. Some say, I think it's the tourism and the military presence there, and it's a very transient area. So I don't know what the reason behind that one is, but they're just seeing a mixture of different types of cases.
Is there any reason that in Northern Virginia area there's more of it seems to be gang related? Is it just a higher population density? Or?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. Quite a while ago, one of the high-level MS-13 people settled in Northern Virginia. And so you tend to have a magnet effect of a lot of them going into that area. We also have just a large population. You're right there at like DC and close to Maryland. Like it's a very tight area where you can have a lot of access to wealthy, affluent people who may buy, tourism. Like I think there's a lot of variables there. But MS-13 in general has a very high population just outside of trafficking. They just in general gang population, normal gang-related type behaviors in Northern Virginia. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about barriers, my job is basically to figure out a way to bring the state together into that collaborative concept that Dee Dee was talking about, right? It takes a village. And I've been preaching that for years. And now that I'm in this position, it's kind of on my duty. It's my duty to sort of bring that together and figure out how to make you all work together and the community work together and everybody come together. So when we're doing that, we have to look at barriers and what is it that we have to fix specifically, because I can't fix something unless we really identify what the issue is. So these are just a handful, this is not an exhaustive list, of barriers for exploited individuals. One of the biggest ones is lack of knowledge of services and processes. They don't always understand what's available to them or how that should work or what that should look like. And many times, there are very few people in the professional world in that area working with these cases that really have a great grasp of that as well. Okay, this is a very specialized area. So you might be an LCSW, but you may not have ever worked a trafficking case. To find somebody that has done that is difficult. And so we have an issue of lack of knowledge of services and processes. And that goes also to resource development, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Fear of retaliation is real, right? They are worried that their trafficker is going to hurt them. They are worried that their family is not going to accept them. They're worried that their social structure in terms of their peers will never accept them again. There's lots of different aspects of that retaliation and that shame and stigma. And then the deportation issue, especially when you're talking about your MS-13 cases, is very, very real as well. There is a public perception that Dee Dee and her team are evil. And that is not the case. I work with them. I've worked with them for years. I tell people that all the time. I have had numerous cases that I've worked with her and her team, and they have never, ever tried to deport one of my victims. Now, they have tried to deport my traffickers, and that's totally okay. I don't care if an offender gets deported. But they have done everything they can to make sure that person who has been exploited is protected. They've gone as far as helping one of them get into college. They do everything they can to be victim-centered. And so we really have to fight that perception that her team is evil, because that's not the case. And then cultural language barriers within that population is very high. Every single one of these victims is going to have complex PTSD. So you have severe mental health concerns there that need to be addressed by someone who knows what they're doing. Lack of transportation. You know, when you have victims that need to go to therapeutic services, and they can't get there, and their therapist is saying, I only see them in the office, period, end of story. I have no way to help them get here. That's a problem, right? We have to figure out a way to bridge that on both sides of transportation for the individual to get there on their own, but also how can we work with that therapist to sort of meet them in the middle somehow, right? We have to find out a way to make that work. And then employment opportunities, especially with the adult population. You know, as law enforcement, I would look at these individuals. We never focused at that time on our exploited individuals in terms of arresting them or hassling them or anything like that. I never bothered them. And so we focused on buyers and sellers. And so I became very friendly with that population. And when I looked at them and said, when did you get here? How did you get into this situation? Almost always, the response would be something to the effect of, I followed a guy, right? I was young, I followed a guy, either late high school or early college. And at that time, we didn't understand trafficking like we do now. And so I did not ever go backwards with them further than that and say, well, what did that look like and how did that start? It's just, we just didn't understand it the same way we do now. But when I would look at them and further say, well, why are you still here? Now they're 30, they're 40. Why are you still in this situation? Why haven't you gotten yourself out of this, right? They would look at me and say, almost exactly the same way every time. I'm a drug addict. I have a criminal history. This is all I've ever known. What am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go? My family won't talk to me. I have absolutely no supports. I'm stuck. And so when we're talking about employment opportunities, that's a resource development area where I embrace organizations that help that population find employment, because they do need a stepping stone. We can put them through therapy, we can put them through medical, we can put them through all of the different areas to make them a healthy person who's ready to move on. But if they don't have somewhere to go to start that process in terms of making an honest living and getting a housing situation in place and things like that, they're never going to progress long term in terms of being a healthy, productive individual, because they're going to feel like there's nowhere else to go. I have to go back to that. And so employment is very, very important. lots of challenges for providers, right? Again, not an exhaustive list. The identification of exploited individuals is very, very difficult, and especially for juveniles. And I tell people this a lot. When you're talking about red flags for juvenile trafficking victims, they look like juvenile delinquents unless you get the collaboration piece in place. So there's lots of cases that, they're skipping school, they're using drugs, they've got an older boyfriend, on and on and on. And when you're looking at those, their grades are falling, they're just falling asleep in class. When you look at those symptoms individually as one professional, and you're unaware of everything else that everybody else knows, honestly, you think juvenile delinquent. It's those patterns, it's those behaviors. But when you start talking to maybe a DSS worker that has had contact with the family, or you talk to, maybe they're involved with probation, or you talk to a teacher, or you talk to a social worker at the school, and you start sharing like, hey, I've noticed that this person is experiencing these things. And they're like, oh yeah, well this is what I know. And you can start putting the puzzle pieces together a little bit, and you see that it looks like a very different picture. Okay, so we really, guys, collaboration, Dee Dee and I are really preaching that. We've got to learn to collaborate and find ways to do that because it's going to help everybody. It's also going to help not duplicate and triplicate services and continue to re-traumatize that individual when they have 3 different therapists given to them by 3 different agencies, and they have to tell their story 3 different times every single week, right? So very, very important. And then there's a lack of awareness and training within, I think, the general community. And I think in the professional community, we need specialized training for each profession in terms of how can you work with this population. And that's going to look different between mental health professionals versus law enforcement versus school staff. It's going to look very, very different. And so I'm working on that as well. Data collection, again, keeps coming up. I am working on that. But these are some of the challenges for providers. So how are we going to address this? What are we doing? The most recent legislation came out in 2019, and it was as a result of the State Crime Commission study that was assigned to them in 2018. And I was involved in that as one of the people that they consulted. I believe Dee Dee was. Yep, lots of us were. And it was a very interesting process. But out of that report that they presented to the General Assembly, 11 bills were pushed forward in the 2019 legislative session. And Dee Dee touched on a couple of them, and you'll see one of them again. One of these was my position. And I am sort of a one-stop shop for human trafficking in Virginia now. This was effective as of July 1st, and I was hired and started in August. So brand new, about 5-6 months in this position. I've just been traveling around the state getting acclimated with all the localities and professionals and figuring out what everybody needs. But these are my responsibilities. It's a lot, right? It's a lot from program management, knowing what everybody's doing, to training, to creating standards and guidelines for residential treatment facilities, to creating what's known as commonly as a John School, on and on and on and on. My scope is large. I can also work on legislation. It's very, very large. So lots to do, and I'm the only person doing it right now, so be patient with me a little bit. But it's nice to know that you do have a place to go, to call, to say, I need help with this. Can we figure this out together? Absolutely. I do not live in an ivory tower. I am traveling the state on a daily basis. I am on a cell phone. I am mobile. So if a locality needs me, they call me, they say, can you come out? I am in their locality probably within a couple of days, depending on our scheduling, and I can sit down with them and say, what do we need, okay? And work with you on that. Attached to my position is the Virginia Prevention of Sex Trafficking Fund. And this is pretty cool. It's not ready to be used yet. It's just in collection phase. It will probably be in collection phase for quite a while, but it's nice to know this exists. And what this states is that individuals who are convicted of specific misdemeanor violations related to trafficking, and there's a long list of them. If you actually look this code section up, you can hyperlink to the whole list of them, will pay a $100 fee into this fund, and those convicted of specific felony trafficking-related charges will pay $500 into this fund. When this fund matures and we have enough money to actually do something with it, then there will be guidelines pushed out as far as how state and local agencies can access these funds for prevention and education related to sex trafficking, which is amazing. But it's going to take a while to collect all of that money. Dee Dee touched on this one. This one was huge in the juvenile realm, okay? Department of Social Services has become a strong partner. Now, nothing's perfect, and we are working on making sure all of the different local offices are trained and up to speed, and they know what they're doing, and they have the resources they need. But Department of Social Services has really wrapped around this and has been very positive about it. So as of now, they shall, which means they must, initiate a human trafficking assessment anytime you call in as a mandated reporter with allegations that an individual is being trafficked. So I'm going to let you sit with that for a minute. They shall, okay? That's amazing. They didn't have to do that in the past. Now, with that, I will give you a caveat. When you call in as a mandated reporter, we've all done it, probably, or at least many of us have done it numerous times. You sit on the phone sometimes for an hour to an hour and a half with that person because that person has to type everything you're saying. And I want you to think about when you're typing something that somebody's telling you, you're not really processing the information and what it means, or at least I'm not. I'm typing the words, right? I'm like, this is what they're saying, and I'm typing. So I will tell you that I would, as a mandated reporter, say to them, hey, I believe this is a possible human trafficking situation, because they may not be processing it at that moment with the red flags as they're typing it. They may not be putting all the pieces together, okay? Maybe they are, but they may not be. So I would add that extra piece in to make sure it gets elevated to the assessment, okay? And then they may now include the traffickers as a caretaker, which means that goes into their investigation and needing to take the case instead of, what is it? What's the term? Is it deny or there's something?
Not founded.
Not founded, thank you. In terms of making it not founded. In the past, we have had numerous occasions where we have a kid in a hotel room with a trafficker or somewhere with a trafficker who is, for all intent and purposes, their caretaker. They are feeding them, they are housing them, and in very loose terms, they are in charge of their safety, right? So used to, they were not considered caretaker. They're not connected to them in terms of family. They're not caretaker. Now they can be included under caretaker status, which is amazing. The other thing that they may do is they may hold that juvenile, Department of Social Services, for up to 72 hours if there's a safety concern while they figure out what to do instead of putting them directly into foster care. And that's where the difficulty is coming with them right now. We're all scrambling to figure out what does that look like. And that comes back to a resource development issue, right? There's not a lot of places to put these juveniles. But that is available to them, and localities are figuring that out.
Are hospitals filling in the gap? Hospitals, like you can check the patient in, right? Check the juvenile.
Not that I'm aware of, but that would be something we could ask Robin. Yeah. Not that I'm aware of, okay? And the other thing I've been learning that I need to tell everybody, and I know, mandated reporters know kind of what they need to do, but it's come to my attention that not everyone is really putting this together with the trafficking piece. You must, as a mandated reporter, report suspected human trafficking activity of juveniles to DSS, to CPS, okay? So some people have told me that they're having some questions and issues with that, so I just want to make it clear. You must report it. All right, so what did we do? We have this legislation, the General Assembly's behind us, the governor's behind this, everybody's supporting this. We are ready to roll, right? What are we doing? So I'm just taking the same slide that I went over earlier. The things in bold are the things that are on my priority list this first several months that I'm working on right now. So awareness and training will be starting to be pushed out. I'm really working on the systemic piece of this. So not so much on community presentations at churches and groups and things like that, but the systemic piece of agencies and working with professionals and helping them understand how they can better support this population. I'm working on resource development. That's going to be a very long road, but the first step is I'm getting a resource list put together that's comprehensive, statewide. It will be broken out by region so that you know what your resources are in your region, and that will be a living document. So when a agency or a provider goes out of business or stops seeing trafficking victims, I need to know that so I can take them off. And when somebody comes in and they begin serving them, I need to know that so I can add them. It's going to be a living document, and I need the help of the entire population to sort of keep up on that because I can't be everywhere all the time. Communication between localities. This whole piece here, the resources, the services, the communication, I am working on with my web developers right now. I'm hoping that it will be some type of online platform, but it's being developed, so don't quote me on exactly what it's going to look like yet, but it's coming. A consistent screening tool. This has been desired by agencies for quite a while. I have my people, my employees, they're out in the field, they're working with this population, they don't know what questions to ask, they don't know what to look for. They would like some type of tool to help them sort of narrow down what they're looking at. And there's been a lot of difficulty with that because it needs to be validated and evidence-based, and just finding something that may work with that. And I'm on that track too. I'm hoping to roll something out soon. The ineffective coordination of services, that comes back to Dee Dee's it's a village thing, right? It takes all of us willing to find a way to be able to work together and to communicate. And then the data collection, that's a long-term project. It's going to take a while, but we're going to work on that. And the reason that's going to take a while is because of the confidentiality issues and the legal aspects of that. So we're going to get all that ironed out, I hope. And this is what I've been working on since I've started. So I've been working with the localities, their task forces, their work groups, figuring out what they need, figuring out who does things well, and then taking the people that are doing things well and getting them to help me with training in localities that need help with that topic. So if there's a locality that has a great task force, roll them over into a locality that wants to build one and how to do that. If there's a locality that's great in the legal realm, roll them into localities that need support with their police and their Commonwealth attorneys and things like that, figuring out how to do that as examples. We have an anti-human trafficking coordinating committee, which I think I talk about that in just a second. I think I had a slide for that. But that is an agency of state-level representatives from the state agencies. It was under executive directive under the previous administration several years ago. And then it's no longer under executive directive, but we're trying to keep it going. And we meet quarterly to talk about what the state-level agencies can do, what can we vet, what can we work on, what can we roll out. And then DSS, when their legislation was just passed, they started what's called the Child Trafficking Work Group. And they did not want to maintain sole ownership of that. And so we've rolled that under my umbrella and put that under the Anti-Human Trafficking Coordinating Committee. And that's comprised of a mixture of providers. So some agencies, but many NGOs, many lawyers. Phoebe, help me, who else is on that one? Just a lot of providers, yeah. Therapeutic providers, we've got healthcare on it. It's a mixture of people. And I like that we rolled it under the Anti-Human Trafficking Coordinating Committee because that's going to allow, I think, seamless communication between the providers that are on the ground level working with this population every day and the state. So if there's a project they want to work on, they can roll it up to the state and say, this is what we've done. We need you guys to look at it and see if you can get it through your agencies. And vice versa. If the state has a project and they need more hands, they need more help, we can roll that down to that group and say, this is what we want to work on, but we need your input, we need your insight, we need your help. Let's do this together. And then I'm hoping to create an adult trafficking work group as well that would sit under the coordinating committee so that we could work on both age groups. Because although there's some similarities, there are also many differences between adults and juveniles when you come to trafficking. So, technical assistance, all kinds of stuff here. So we're going to be busy. Oh, here's the work group structure. So this is what I'm trying to do. I'm very excited about this because I think the biggest barrier we have as providers is communication, and I think this will help that. Whoops. So these are just some really good programs. This is not exhaustive. I am not trying to exclude anybody if they're not on this, but I was trying to just pull some really good model programs for the state in different types of professions. So education and prevention, Prince William County Public Schools is at the forefront of that and has been since 2012. They have an amazing wraparound program that includes education, identification of their students who are being exploited, and they case manage them through graduation. And they do work collaboratively with all of the other agencies in the county and have become the central point person or contact person for the entire county when you're talking about juveniles. So they have a great program. As far as coordinated legal efforts, Henrico is doing a very, very good job. They have a very nice coordinated effort between their CA's office, their victim witness, and their police department, and they're having good success. Now, most of their cases end up being adult, a few juveniles sprinkled in, but mostly adult. For residential treatment and aftercare, Safe Harbor is a fantastic one for adults, and Straight Street is not completely open yet, but they are going to be the point person, I think, for juveniles. They are ready, they are staffed, they are ready to go. They're just waiting on finishing up some reserve funding before they actually open their doors officially. And then for task force efforts, you've got two major ones that are pretty coordinated, two very coordinated. One is Hampton Roads, and one is in Northern Virginia. So this is just something I've created. If you want to contact me later, you have an idea, you have a thought. It also has, within this survey, there's also a place for you to put in resources. So if you work with a provider that you think is amazing and is really good working with this population within your region, you can put them in there and I will add them to my resource directory. Or if you are a provider and you would like to be included, I will do that as well. But I know, like, when I'm driving home, my 2-hour drive home, I do my best thinking during that time. And then I say, I should have said this, I should have asked that, I should have done such and such, right? So this is a way for you to submit that if you do that. And then this is my electronic business card. So you are welcome to call me, you are welcome to email me. I am here for all of you to help. So that's it. Yeah. Oh, back one slide, absolutely. Yes, ma'am. I can't tell you exactly where it's located.
Oh, it's not allowed to, is it confidential?
Yeah, yeah, they don't want anybody to know.
Is it specifically for juveniles that have been trafficked?
Yeah, it's specifically going to be for juvenile trafficking victims.
Do you know if they'll take CSA funding in regards to
They won't, no grants, no funding. It's all going to come from the community.
Yeah,
That's why it's taking a little longer for it to open.
Okay.
Yep.
they're trying to get a very large reserve fund, which is really good, and it's taking a long time for them to open because of that. But the benefit to that is so many facilities open very quickly, and then they close in 6 months to a year because they can't maintain that level of expense, right? So they're working on getting a large reserve fund in place, and they have private donors and things like that so that they can maintain long-term and stay open.
So who makes referrals for traffic?
Right, because they're not going to have a huge amount of beds, so a lot of it's just going to be law enforcement.
Okay.
Social services will be the ones that they're going to be looking for. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
Anybody else? For me or Dee Dee? Any questions? We'll share the mic.
I just want to say thank you. It was so great to schedule this talk in the middle of our symposium because I was feeling hopeless. Were you guys feeling like depressed? And this is like a ray of sunshine. This is like all hope. And I thank you so much for your efforts. I mean, the laws, I didn't even know that much was passed.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you so much. It's just wonderful.
Absolutely. All right. You go north, I go south.
Sorry, I'll take that from you. Thank you. Sort of along those lines, I wanted to make everyone aware that you may have noticed on our brochures and on some of our promotional materials that there may be a blank space. Tomorrow morning, Thursday, February 6th, we do have a lecture at the 10 a.m. hour, and that's actually going to be geared toward advocacy. And if you want a quick little blurb about that, this session will provide an overview of how health professionals can use their voices as advocates to end human trafficking. Participants will receive a brief overview of policy solutions to address this public health crisis and learn about advocacy strategies aim to prevent and to terminate the demand for human trafficking. So kind of similarly along your lines, where can we go in the future? You are more than welcome to attend. We'd love to have your input on this session, just to make everyone aware that that is happening tomorrow morning. Thank you.